Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that you couldn't imagine they'd ever harm you? What if that trust masked a betrayal so profound it ended in tragedy? On a quiet morning in June 2023, a chilling discovery shattered the lives of everyone involved. It was 6:47 a.m. on Tuesday, June 20, 2023, when a maintenance worker at the Horizon Financial Center made a routine walk through the parking lot. Amid rows of empty spaces, a lone black sedan sat at the far edge of the lot. The worker thought little of it. Cars were often left overnight, but something felt off. By 7:12 a.m., the police had arrived. The black sedan was now surrounded by yellow tape. Inside the vehicle, 38-year-old Tayana Rashad, a prominent marketing executive, was found unresponsive. Her head tilted slightly against the driver's seat, her phone vibrating on the console next to her. The screen lit up repeatedly with incoming calls, each one unanswered, each one more desperate than the last. But why was she here, and why had she not returned home? As investigators began piecing together the timeline, what they uncovered would send shockwaves through her family and friends, unraveling a web of secrets that no one could have anticipated. An autopsy soon revealed that Tayana's death was no accident. The signs were subtle but definitive: she had been murdered. Meanwhile, CCTV footage from the parking lot provided a vital clue: a shadowy figure stepping out of Tayana's car just after midnight. Their face was obscured, their identity concealed. As detectives delved deeper, they uncovered a text message on Tayana's phone that raised more questions than answers. It read, "If I can't have you to myself, no one can, not even your husband." What happened to Tayana Rashad in the final hours of her life? Who sent that text, and why? This was no ordinary crime, it was the culmination of a dangerous obsession, one that spiraled far beyond anyone's control. If you're captivated by true stories that reveal the unexpected depths of human nature, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest uploads. Dive with us into the mysteries, the heartbreaks, and the gripping tales that remind us how fragile trust can be. Join us as we uncover stories that linger long after they're told. Let's begin. Tayana Rashad was the kind of woman many admired. A top-performing marketing executive with an enviable career, she had a commanding presence that turned heads in every room she entered. Colleagues often spoke of her dedication and sharp instincts, but beneath the polished surface, her personal life told a different story. At home, Tayana was married to Davian Rashad, an IT specialist who preferred quiet evenings to the fast-paced energy of her work life. Their marriage, once brimming with passion and shared dreams, had grown distant over time. The demands of careers and the weight of unspoken frustrations left them navigating parallel lives under the same roof. Davian, ever thoughtful and reserved, loved his wife deeply but struggled to find a way to reconnect with her. Their life wasn't entirely devoid of joy, though. Tayana found comfort in her childhood best friend, Alika Huntley. Where Tayana was composed, Alika was bold and charismatic, a woman whose laughter could light up a room. The two had shared countless milestones, their bond surviving the tests of time and adulthood. But Alika harbored a secret, a dangerous one. Alika was married to Jarrell Huntley, a confident and ambitious salesman whose charm often masked his underlying selfishness. Their marriage, unlike Tayana and Davian's, was far less about love and more about convenience. Jarrell's charisma won over clients, but it rarely extended to his wife. Alika tolerated the cracks in their relationship, but her discontent had festered into something far more troubling. From the outside, Alika and Jarrell appeared to have it all. Yet, behind her effortless smile, Alika's true feelings began to take shape. She had long admired Davian Rashad, Tayana's quiet and steady husband. Over time, admiration turned to desire, and Alika began using her friendship with Tayana as a way to manipulate her way closer to Davian. While Davian worked tirelessly to rekindle the bond he shared with Tayana, Alika saw an opportunity to disrupt what was left of their marriage. She knew how to read Tayana, how to press just the right buttons, and how to plant seeds of doubt disguised as friendly advice. At the same time, Jarrell Huntley, Alika's husband, was far from blameless. Though he played the role of a supportive partner in public, his actions revealed a man who prioritized his own desires above all else. His flirtations with co-workers and increasingly reckless behavior added another layer of tension to their already fragile union. In many ways, both marriages were teetering on the edge. Teyana and Davion's struggles were rooted in distance and unspoken feelings, while Alika and Jarrell's issues stemmed from deceit and ulterior motives. But what neither couple could foresee was how their choices, their secrets, and their betrayals would collide, igniting a series of events that would lead to devastating consequences for everyone involved. Sometimes, the most unexpected suggestions come from those closest to us. It was during a casual shopping trip, amidst racks of summer dresses and whispered laughter, that Alika Huntley introduced an idea that would change everything. Alika, ever confident and daring, leaned toward Teyana, her voice low but laced with intrigue. "Jarrell and I have been exploring something new, something exciting," she began. The words lingered, deliberately vague but enough to capture Teyana's attention. Alika's expression turned serious as she shared the details. A partner-swapping arrangement she claimed had brought a spark back to her marriage. Teyana froze, unsure how to respond. The notion was both unsettling and oddly compelling. As Alika described the adventure of it, Teyana found herself grappling with her own hidden thoughts, ones she had never dared to share with Davion. With a hesitant laugh, she confessed, "I've thought about it, but Davion would never go for something like that." Alika seized the moment, offering her friend not just validation but a solution. "You don't have to bring it up as your idea," she suggested. "Frame it as something you heard about, something fun other couples are trying. Don't push too hard at first. Just plant the seed." The idea stayed with Teyana long after the shopping trip ended. She couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, this could be the spark her marriage needed. That evening, over a quiet dinner at home, she decided to test the waters. She chose her words carefully, presenting the idea as a casual conversation topic. "You know, Alika mentioned something interesting today," she began, avoiding eye contact. "She said she and Jarrell have been trying this unconventional way to add excitement to their marriage." Davion looked up from his plate, his brow furrowing. "What kind of excitement?" he asked cautiously. Teyana hesitated, then forged ahead. "They've been swapping partners with another couple. She said it's brought them closer together, made things fun again. What do you think?" Davion's reaction was immediate, discomfort masked by silence. "I don't think that's something for us," he finally replied, his tone firm but not dismissive. Teyana nodded, feigning indifference, but she wasn't ready to let the idea go. Over the next few days, Teyana revisited the topic in subtle ways, each time framing it as something she had merely heard about. She emphasized how Alika claimed it had transformed her relationship, weaving a narrative of renewed passion and adventure. By the third conversation, Davion's resistance began to waver, not because he wanted it, but because he didn't want to be the one standing in the way of Teyana's happiness. "If it means that much to you," he finally said with a sigh, "we can try it. But I don't think this is what our marriage needs." Teyana's excitement was palpable. She assured him it was just an experiment, a way to break out of their routine. For Davion, the decision was less about curiosity and more about preserving the fragile connection they still shared. What neither of them realized was that this agreement, born out of reluctance and compromise, was exactly what Alika had been waiting for. A weekend meant to rekindle bonds and add excitement began with an air of anticipation. The couples had rented a luxurious beach house, a sprawling property with sweeping ocean views, a private pool, and the kind of serene isolation that promised adventure. Alika had chosen the location carefully, ensuring it exuded charm and privacy, but for reasons far beyond what Teyana or Davion could have imagined. For her, this wasn't just a getaway, it was an opportunity to bring her desires to life. The first evening started with drinks on the deck, laughter mingling with the sound of waves crashing in the distance. Conversations flowed easily at first, but as the night deepened, so did the tension. It was Alika who suggested they explore, a word that hung in the air, equal parts invitation and challenge. The shift was subtle but undeniable. Teyana, emboldened by the setting and Alika's encouragement, leaned into the experience, eager to embrace the newfound spark. For Davian, however, every step felt like uncharted territory, and despite his calm exterior, unease brewed beneath the surface. When the first encounter unfolded, it was a mix of exhilaration and awkwardness. Emotions ran high, some driven by curiosity, others by hesitation. Alika's plan worked flawlessly. She got exactly what she wanted, time with Davian, the man she'd long desired. Her gaze lingered on him in ways she never allowed herself before, and for a brief moment, she felt victorious. For Teyana, the experience brought an unexpected sense of joy. She hadn't felt this alive in years. The tension that had weighed on her marriage seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of freedom she couldn't quite articulate. But Davian's unease lingered. He smiled when necessary, played along when expected, but something about the situation felt inherently wrong. Watching Teyana's happiness filled him with a bittersweet sense of relief, but he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that this wasn't the solution their marriage needed. As for Jarrell, he embraced the moment with the kind of confidence he was known for. But beneath his charm lay secrets he had no intention of revealing. His flirtations with a coworker back home had already crossed boundaries, and the guilt he carried from his double life began to weigh on him. By the end of the weekend, Teyana returned home invigorated, her smile brighter than it had been in years. Alika, meanwhile, was more determined than ever to keep the arrangement going, savoring every stolen glance and fleeting touch with Davian. For Davian, the weekend left an aftertaste of discomfort he couldn't shake. He wanted to believe this was what Teyana needed, but deep down, he couldn't ignore the growing sense that their lives were veering towards something they might not be able to undo. Jarrell, however, became distant, retreating into his own thoughts and distractions. His secret affair began to take precedence in his mind, leaving Alika questioning his sudden shift in behavior. What had started as an experiment for excitement had quickly become a crossroads, one that would lead each of them down paths they couldn't yet foresee. It wasn't even a week later when Alika Huntley sent Teyana another message. This time, it wasn't just an invitation, it was a demand, thinly veiled as a suggestion. She proposed another weekend meetup, her enthusiasm evident in every word. Alika's fixation on Davian had grown, fueled by her belief that this arrangement gave her exactly what she wanted. The idea of being close to Davian had become an obsession. Alika's need to see him again wasn't obvious at first. But by the third meetup, her behavior started to raise questions. Even Jarrell, who had initially supported the swap, began to notice the changes in his wife. This wasn't just excitement, this was something more intense, something uncontrollable. Alika began orchestrating ways to meet Davian, even when the others weren't available. If Jarrell or Teyana were tied up with work or family obligations, she made excuses to ensure she could still see him. Her persistence didn't go unnoticed. When she once called Davian directly to arrange a private meeting, his response was sharp and immediate. "This isn't part of the agreement," he said, his frustration clear. But Alika wasn't deterred. She argued, her tone calm but manipulative. "What difference does it make? We've already done this before. Whether it's arranged or not, it's the same." Her words unsettled him. It was no longer about their agreement, this was something entirely different, something dangerous. Alika's obsession began to spiral. She texted Davian incessantly, sometimes sending messages late into the night. When he blocked her number, she found ways around it, using alternate numbers to contact him. Her fixation knew no bounds. She even went as far as following him to work, watching from a distance as he entered the office, hoping for even a fleeting moment of interaction. Meanwhile, Jarrell had secrets of his own. While Alika fixated on Davian, Jarrell was preoccupied with his ongoing affair with a coworker. What he didn't know, what no one could have anticipated, was that the woman he was seeing carried something far more dangerous than guilt. She was HIV positive and also had HPV, a fact she had not disclosed to him. For Davian, the situation had reached a breaking point. Alika's relentless behavior, coupled with his growing unease about the arrangement, became too much to ignore. He turned to Tayana, hoping to make sense of the chaos their lives had become. "Tayana," he began one evening, his voice heavy with frustration, "I don't think this is working. Something about this, it feels wrong." Tayana, still caught up in the thrill of what she thought was a revitalized marriage, dismissed his concerns at first. She didn't see what Davian did, or perhaps she didn't want to. But the cracks in their foundation were becoming impossible to ignore. Alika's obsession was no longer a secret. Her actions were drawing lines that couldn't be erased, and Davian found himself at the center of a storm he never asked for. What started as a reckless attempt to bring excitement into their lives was quickly spiraling into something far more destructive. And yet, the worst was still to come. It was a moment Jarrell Huntley never saw coming. During a quiet afternoon at work, his phone buzzed with a message from his coworker, the woman he had been secretly seeing. The words on the screen hit him like a freight train, "We need to talk. I tested positive for HIV and HPV." Jarrell panicked. His mind raced as he reread the message, his heart pounding. How could this have happened? He knew the risks he was taking, but this was the kind of consequence he thought he could avoid. The guilt of his infidelity weighed heavier than ever, but fear kept him silent. He told no one, not Alika, not the other couples involved in the swap arrangement. For Jarrell, secrecy was the only way to protect himself from the fallout. Meanwhile, Davian Rashad had reached his limit. The swap arrangement, once a reluctant compromise to make his wife happy, had become unbearable. The unease he felt each time they participated lingered long after the weekends ended, and Alika's growing obsession with him had pushed things over the edge. One evening, Davian sat Tayana down in their living room. His tone was steady, but his words were resolute. "I can't do this anymore," he said, avoiding her gaze. "It's not healthy for us. This arrangement is destroying our marriage." Tayana, caught off guard, tried to argue. She insisted that the swap had brought new energy to their relationship, but deep down, she knew Davian was right. Reluctantly, she agreed to stop. Yet, her feelings were more complicated than she let on. While she loved her husband, she found herself thinking about Jarrell more than she cared to admit. The thrill of their connection lingered in her mind, a temptation she couldn't quite shake. For Alika, Davian's decision was a devastating blow. She had built her plans around the arrangement, using it as a way to get closer to him. Without it, she felt her grip slipping. Her frustration boiled over into rage. Late one evening, Alika confronted Davian outside his office. Her voice was sharp, her words laced with accusation. "You're ruining everything," she hissed. "Why are you being so selfish?" Davian's response was firm and unyielding. "This was never about me, Alika. It was about saving my marriage. Whatever you think this is, it ends now." But Alika couldn't let it go. Her obsession spiraled further into desperation. Every rejection, every boundary Davian set only fueled her determination to keep him in her life. What she couldn't have, she felt compelled to control. The breaking point had been reached. Secrets, guilt, and unspoken desires were about to collide in ways none of them could predict. The fragile threads holding their lives together were unraveling, one by one, setting the stage for a confrontation none of them could escape. The night of June 19, 2023, was supposed to be like any other for Tayana Rashad. Her workday had been long, and she was looking forward to heading home. But at 10:27 p.m., her phone buzzed with an unexpected message from Alika Huntley. "Can we talk? It's important. Meet me outside your office." Tayana hesitated. The tension between her and Alika had been growing, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to confront it now. But something in the message, perhaps the urgency, perhaps the history they shared, compelled her to respond. At 10:45 p.m., security cameras captured Teyana leaving her office building. She walked briskly to her car, phone in hand, but instead of driving away, her car remained parked in the far corner of the lot, unnoticed in the dark of the night. It would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Hours later, in the early hours of June 20th, Alika made her next move. She had Jarrell's phone in her hand, the glow of the screen illuminating her face. Crafting a text to Teyana, she carefully chose her words to ensure they would spark suspicion and mislead investigators. The message read, "If I can't have you to myself, no one can, not even your husband." Satisfied, she hit send and placed the phone back where she found it. The seeds of her plan were in place. At 6:47 a.m., a maintenance worker at the Horizon Financial Center noticed Teyana's black sedan parked at the far edge of the lot. It was unusual, he thought, for a car to be left there overnight. As he approached, he realized something was terribly wrong. By 7:12 a.m., the police had arrived. Yellow tape cordoned off the area as officers examined the scene. Inside the car, Teyana's lifeless body was slumped against the driver's seat. There were signs of a struggle, bruising on her wrists, faint smudges of makeup streaked across her face, but no immediate clues as to what had happened. The eerie silence was broken only by the persistent vibration of her phone on the console. Calls and messages poured in, unanswered. Among them, investigators would later find the cryptic text sent from Jarrell's phone. It was a chilling clue, but one that raised more questions than answers. What had transpired in the hours between Teyana leaving her office and the discovery of her body? Who was responsible for? And how far had Alika gone in her desperate bid to control the narrative? As detectives began piecing together the timeline, the threads of deceit and obsession would start to unravel. But for now, all they had was a scene marked by tragedy, and the haunting realization that this was no random act of violence. The investigation into Teyana Rashad's murder began with a cryptic clue, a threatening message sent from Jarrell Huntley's phone. It was direct, chilling, and enough to draw immediate attention to him as the primary suspect. Detectives brought Jarrell in for questioning. Sitting in the dimly lit interrogation room, he denied any involvement in the crime. "That message wasn't from me," he stated firmly, his voice calm but tinged with frustration. When pressed further, he turned the focus elsewhere. "If you're looking for someone with a motive," he continued, "you should be asking my wife, Alika. She was obsessed with Davion, and she hated how close he and Teyana were." At first, detectives viewed Jarrell's claims as a deflection, a classic move to shift suspicion. But as they delved deeper into Alika's behavior, inconsistencies began to emerge. Meanwhile, Davion Rashad had his own suspicions. He had noticed Alika's increasingly erratic behavior in the weeks leading up to Teyana's death, the late-night calls, the uninvited visits, and the inappropriate messages. Feeling uneasy, he approached the police with what he knew. "I don't know if this helps," he told the detectives, his tone hesitant, "but Alika's been acting strange. She's crossed lines that have nothing to do with me and Teyana's relationship." This tip led investigators to dig into Alika's digital footprint. What they found painted a disturbing picture. Buried in her phone and email records were a series of messages that revealed a dangerous obsession. There were texts to Davion that had gone unanswered, emails to Jarrell expressing frustration with their marriage, and even drafts of messages she had never sent, angry, desperate words that hinted at a growing fixation on removing Teyana from the equation. Piece by piece, the detectives uncovered the extent of Alika's plotting. She had used Jarrell's phone to send the threatening message, knowing it would divert suspicion. She had lured Teyana to the parking lot under false pretenses, setting the stage for what would be her final confrontation. As the evidence mounted, a clearer picture of Alika's intentions began to emerge. Her obsession with Davion had driven her to extremes, and her jealousy of Teyana had festered into something far more dangerous. What had initially seemed like a simple case of a jealous spouse had transformed into a web of deceit and manipulation. The detectives had their real suspect. But the question remained, would Alika confess, or would they need to unravel even more of her lies to bring her to justice? The turning point in the investigation came when Alika Huntley was invited to the police station under the guise of clarifying details about the threatening text sent from her husband's phone. She arrived composed, her demeanor calm, as though she was merely helping the detectives piece together an unfortunate misunderstanding. But the detectives had more than just questions. They had evidence, digital records, witness testimonies, and a timeline that placed her at the center of the crime. Alika's composure began to crack as they laid it all out in front of her. "We know about the message," one detective began, sliding a printed transcript across the table. "And we know it wasn't Jarrell who sent it." Alika's response was measured at first. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice steady but her hands fidgeting slightly. Then they presented the CCTV footage, showing her movements the night Tayana disappeared. Her car, parked nearby. Her entering and leaving the lot in a suspiciously hurried manner. Finally, they unveiled the damning text exchanges between her and Davion, revealing her obsession and her deep-seated jealousy toward Tayana. The room fell silent. Alika stared at the evidence, her facade slipping away. Faced with the mounting pressure, she finally broke. Her voice quivered as she confessed, detailing everything in chilling clarity. "I called Tayana that night," she began, her words slow, deliberate. "I told her I needed to meet her outside her office. She trusted me, so she came." Alika explained how she had waited in her car, watching Tayana approach. When Tayana got into the car, the confrontation escalated quickly. Words were exchanged, Alika's accusations, her jealousy pouring out, and Tayana's confusion turning to fear. "I didn't plan for it to go that far," Alika continued, her voice barely above a whisper. But she wasn't listening. She kept saying she didn't understand. I snapped. Alika described how she used a concealed object, a small, blunt instrument she had brought in her bag, to strike Tayana. The blow left Tayana incapacitated but alive. Alika, panicking, smothered her with a piece of fabric from the back seat, ensuring there would be no struggle. Her plan to frame Jarrell was calculated. After the murder, she used his phone to send the cryptic message, knowing it would point the investigation in his direction. She admitted to seeing Jarrell's texts about his affair and diagnosis, and how that knowledge fueled her hatred. "I wanted him to pay, too," she confessed, her voice now filled with bitterness. "For betraying me, for putting me at risk, for making me feel like I wasn't enough." But Tayana, she had to go first. The trial that followed gripped the nation. Alika Huntley was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and her confession sealed her fate. Jarrell Huntley wasn't without consequences, either. His reckless endangerment and failure to disclose his HIV and HPV diagnosis led to separate charges, further tarnishing his already crumbling reputation. As the trial unfolded, the public was captivated by the layers of betrayal and obsession. Alika's actions were dissected in courtrooms, revealing a woman consumed by jealousy and desperation, willing to destroy everything to get what she wanted. In the end, Alika was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jarrell faced fines and a short sentence but emerged a broken man, his double life laid bare for the world to see. The fallout left an indelible mark on everyone involved. Davion and Tayana's families struggled to reconcile the loss and betrayal, while the nation watched, reminded of the devastating consequences that unchecked obsession and deceit can bring. The story of Tayana Rashad's tragic death is one filled with lessons about trust, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of unchecked desires. But at its core, it also reveals the real dangers of silence, both in relationships and in health. HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus, is a virus that attacks the body's immune system. If untreated, it can lead to AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, leaving the body vulnerable to life-threatening infections. While advances in medicine have made HIV manageable with proper treatment, it remains a serious condition requiring honest communication and preventative care. HPV, or human papillomavirus, is another widespread health concern. It is a sexually transmitted infection that can lead to complications like genital warts and, in some cases, cancers. Like HIV, it underscores the importance of transparency in intimate relationships. Failing to disclose such information not only puts others at risk but also creates a breeding ground for mistrust and betrayal. For Davian Rashad, life after Tayana's death has been anything but easy. Haunted by memories of his wife and the chaos that surrounded her final days, he struggles to rebuild his life. Each step forward is a reminder of what he has lost and the weight of the choices that led to it. As for Jarrell and Alika Huntley, their marriage dissolved under the pressure of lies, infidelity, and Alika's devastating actions. What began as a transactional relationship ended with a legacy of regret and pain. Jarrell, burdened by his role in the events, faces a future defined by guilt and a tarnished reputation. This story is not just about individuals, it is a cautionary tale. It serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of secrecy, obsession, and moral compromise. When desires go unchecked, the lesson rings clear, they can lead to destruction that no one saw coming. We encourage you to reflect on this story and the importance of open communication, trust, and self-awareness in your own relationships. And if you found this video insightful, please subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking stories. Together, we can uncover the truths that shape our world.